Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Vedkriya vidilan she ihakai kartavya avashya anyata pratyavai. Here, the use of the verb bhavet, which is in the imperative mood, tells us that this certainly must be done. Non-compliance would be abandonment of duty. Purport. This is imperative. This imperative is applicable to pure devotees. Neophytes will be able to understand these affairs only after being elevated by regulated devotional service under the expert guidance of the spiritual master. Then they too will be competent to hear of the love affairs of Radha and Krishna. As long as one is in material conditioned life, strict discipline is required in the matter of moral and immoral activities. The absolute world is transcendental and free from such distinctions because there is an inebriety. Because there an inebriety is not possible. But in this material world, a sexual appetite necessitates distinction between moral and immoral conduct. There are no sexual activities in the spiritual world. The transactions between lover and beloved in the spiritual world are pure transcendental love and unadulterated bliss. One who has not been attracted by the transcendental beauty of rasa will certainly be dragged down into material attraction. Thus, to act in material contamination and progress to the darkest region of hellish life. But by understanding the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna, one is freed from the grip of attraction to material so-called love between man and woman. Similarly, one who understands the pure parental love of Nanda and Yashoda for Krishna will be saved from being dragged into material parental affection. If one accepts Krishna as the supreme friend, the attraction of material friendship will be finished for him, and he will not be dismayed by so-called friendship with mundane wranglers. If he is attracted by servitorship to Krishna, he will no longer have to serve the material body in the degraded status of material existence, with the false hope of becoming master in the future. Similarly, one who sees the greatness of Krishna in neutrality will certainly never again seek the so-called relief of impersonalist or voidist philosophy. If one is not attracted by the transcendental nature of Krishna, one is sure to be attracted to material enjoyment. Thus, to become implicated in the clinging network of virtuous and sinful activities and to continue material existence by transmigrating from one body to another. Only in Krishna consciousness can one achieve the highest perfection of life. Evancha Jaite Krishna Pratyakartarana Asura Samhara sas asura samhara anusanga prayojana imata chaitanya krishna purna bhagavan juga dharma pravartana nahetarkam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Just as these desires are the fundamental reason for Krishna's appearance, whereas destroying the demons is only an incidental necessity, so for Sri Krishna Chaitanya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, promulgating the Dharma of the age is incidental. Ona karani jabe hoila vatare mana juga dharma kalo hoila se kali milana. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Kona karane, by some reason, jabe, when, hoila, there was, avatare, in incarnation, mano, inclination, jugadharma, for the religion of the age, kala, the time, hoila, there was, shekale, at that time, milana, conjunction. When the Lord desired to appear for another reason, the time for promulgating the religion of the age also arose. Dui hetu avatare loi bhaktagan apane asvare prema nam sankirtan Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thus, with two intentions, the Lord appeared with his devotees and tasted the nectar of prema with the congregational chanting of the holy name. Shedwari achandale kirtana sanchare nam prema male kanta pare la samsare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Thus he spread kirtan, even among the untouchables. He wore a wreath of the holy name and prema, with which he garlanded the entire world. E mato bhakta bhavakari angikar, apani achari bhakta kari laprachar. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. In this way, assuming the sentiment of a devotee, he preached devotional service while practicing it himself. When Rupa Goswami met Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Prayag, Allahabad, he offered his respectful obeisances by submitting that Lord Chaitanya was more magnanimous than any other avatar of Krishna because he was distributing love of Krishna. His mission was to enhance love of Godhead. In the human form of life, the highest achievement is to attain the platform of love of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya did not invent a system of religion, as people sometimes assume. Religious systems are meant to show the existence of God, who is then generally approached as the cosmic order supplier. But Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's transcendental mission is to distribute love of Godhead to everyone. Anyone who accepts God as the Supreme can take to the process of chanting Hare Krishna and become a lover of God. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya is the most magnanimous. This munificent broadcasting of devotional service is possible only for Krishna himself. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya is Krishna. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has taught the philosophy of surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who has surrendered to the Supreme can make further progress by learning to love Him. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement propagated by Lord Chaitanya is especially meant for those who are cognizant of the presence of the Supreme Godhead, the ultimate controller of everything. His mission is to teach people how to dovetail themselves into engagements of transcendental loving service. He is Krishna teaching his own service from the position of a devotee. The Lord's acceptance of the role of a devotee in the eternal form of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is another of the Lord's wonderful features. A conditioned soul cannot reach the absolute personality of Godhead by his imperfect endeavor. And therefore, it is wonderful that Lord Sri Krishna, in the form of Lord Gauranga, has made it easy for everyone to approach him. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Swarup-Damodara Goswami has described Lord Chaitanya as Krishna himself with the attitude of Radharani, or a combination of Radha and Krishna. The intention of Lord Chaitanya is to taste Krishna's sweetness in transcendental love. He does not care to think of himself as Krishna because he wants the position of Radharani. We should remember this. A class of so-called devotees called the Nadia Nagaris or Gaura Nagaris pretend that they have this sentiment of gopis toward Lord Chaitanya, but they do not realize that he placed himself not as the enjoyer of Krishna, but as the enjoyed, the devotee of Krishna. The concoctions of unauthorized persons pretending to be bona fide have not been accepted by Lord Chaitanya. Presentations such as those of the Gaura Nagaris are only disturbances to the sincere execution of the mission of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya is undoubtedly Krishna himself, and he is always non-different from Srimati Radharani. But the emotion technically called Vipralambha, which Lord Chaitanya adopted, which the Lord adopted for confidential reasons, should not be disturbed in the name of service. A mundaner should not unnecessarily intrude into affairs of transcendence and thereby displease the Lord. One must always be on guard against this sort of devotional anomaly. A devotee is not meant to create disturbances to Krishna. As Srila Rupa Goswami has explained, devotional service is anakulyena, or favorable to Krishna. Acting unfavorably toward Krishna is not devotion. Kamsa was the enemy of Krishna. He always thought of Krishna, but he thought of him as an enemy. One should always avoid such unfavorable so-called service. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lord Chaitanya has accepted the role of Radharani, and we should support that position as Swarup Damodar did in the Kambhira, the room where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed in Puri. He always reminded Lord Chaitanya of Radha's feelings of separation as they are described in Srimad Bhagavatam, and Lord Chaitanya appreciated his assistance. But the Gaura Nagaris, who placed Lord Chaitanya in the position of enjoyer and themselves as his enjoyed, are not approved by Lord Chaitanya or by Lord Chaitanya's followers. Instead of being blessed, the foolish imitators are left completely apart. Their concoctions are against the principles of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The doctrine of transcendental enjoyment by Krishna cannot be mixed up with the doctrine of transcendental feeling of separation from Krishna in the role of Radharani. Dasya Sakya Vatsalya Ara Shringar Chari Prima Chaturvidha Bhakti Adara. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Four kinds of devotees are the receptacles of the four kinds of mellows in love of God, namely servitude, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nija Nija Bhava Shabe Shishta Kari Mane, Nija Bhave Kari Krishna Sukha Asvadhare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Each kind of devotee feels that his sentiment is the most excellent, and thus, in that mood, he tastes great happiness with Lord Krishna. Tatastahaya mane vichar jari kari shabrash hoite shingaradi madhuri. Tatastahiyam mane vichar yari kari shabrash hoite shingari adi madhuri. Adika madhuri. Tatastahaya. Tatastahija. Becoming impartial. Mane, the mind, in the mind. Vichara, consideration. Jadi, if. Kari, doing. Shab, ras. All the mellows. Hoite, then. Shringare, in conjugal love. Adhika, greater. Madhuri, sweetness. Tatashta ha'ija. Mane vichar jadi kare, shabrash hoite shingari adhika madhuri. But if we compare the sentiments in an impartial mood, we find that the conjugal sentiment is superior to all others in sweetness. Purport. No one is higher or lower than anyone else in transcendental relationships with the Lord, for in the absolute realm everything is equal. But although these relationships are absolute, there are also transcendental differences between them. Thus, the transcendental relationship of conjugal love is considered the highest perfection. Prikishori. Increasing love is experienced in various tastes, one above another. But that love which has the highest taste in the gradual succession of desire manifests itself in the form of conjugal love. Purport. This is a verse from Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu 2.5-38. Srivatsa. Ataiva madhurrasa kahitaranam swakiya parakiya bhavid vividha samsthan. My bad. Sorry. Moichido. One more time. Ataiva madhurrasa kahitaranam swakiya parakiya bhavid vividha samsthan. Therefore, I call it Madhura Ras. It has two further divisions, namely wedded and unwedded love. Again. No. Verse 47. Shivatsa. Parakiya bhave atira ulasa vrajavina Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. There is a great increase of mellow in the unwedded conjugal mood. Such love is found nowhere but in Vraj. Vrajavaduganir e pavenirabhati tarmate shri radhaya paviravadi. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This mood is unbounded in the damsels of Vraja, but among them it finds its perfection in Sri Radha. Prodha nirmal bhava prema sarvottama Krishnera madhurya ras asvadara karana. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Her pure, mature love surpasses that of all others. Her love is the cause of Lord Krishna's tasting the sweetness of the conjugal relationship. Deva she bhava angikara kari sadhilya javancha gauranga shri hari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Therefore Lord Gauranga, who is Sri Hari himself, accepted the sentiments of Radha and thus fulfilled his own desires. Purport. Of the four kinds of reciprocation of loving service, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya, Madhura is considered the fullest, but the conjugal relationship is further divided into two varieties, namely Swakya and Parakya. Swakya is the relationship with Krishna as a formerly married husband, and Parakya is the relationship with Krishna as a paramour. Expert analysts have decided that the transcendental ecstasy of the Parakya mellow is better because it is more enthusiastic. This phase of conjugal love is found in those who have surrendered to the Lord in intense love, knowing well that such illicit love with a paramour is not morally approved in society. The risks involved in such love of Godhead make this emotion superior to the relationship in which such risk is not involved. The validity of such risk, however, is possible only in the transcendental realm. Swakya and Parakya conjugal love of Godhead have no existence in the material world, and Parakya is not exhibited anywhere in Vaikuntha, but only in the portion of Goloka Vrindavan known as Vraj. Some devotees think that Krishna is eternally the enjoyer in Goloka Vrindavan, but only sometimes comes to the platform of Vraj to enjoy Parakya Ras. The 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, however, have explained that Krishna's pastimes in Vraj are eternal, like his other activities in Goloka Vrindavan. Vraj is a confidential part of Goloka Vrindavan. Krishna exhibited his Vraj pastimes on the surface of this world, and similar pastimes are eternally exhibited in Vraj in Goloka Vrindavan, where Parakya Ras is ever existent. In the 3rd chapter of this epic, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has explicitly accepted the fact that Krishna appears in this material world at the end of the Dwapara age of the 28th Chatur Yuga of Vaivasvata Manu, and brings with him his Vrajadham, which is the eternal abode of his highest pastimes. As the Lord appears by his own internal potency, so he also brings all his paraphernalia by the same internal potency, without extraneous help. It is further stated here in the Caitanya-caritamrta that the Parakya sentiment exists only in that transcendental realm and nowhere else. This highest form of ecstasy can exist only in the most confidential part of the transcendental world. But by the causeless mercy of the Lord, we can have a peep into that invisible rush. The transcendental mellow, relished by the gopis in Vraj, is super excellently featured in Srimati Radharani. Mature assimilation of the transcendental humor of conjugal love is represented by Srimati Radharani, whose feelings are incomprehensible even to the Lord himself. The intensity of her love, the intensity of her loving service is the highest form of ecstasy. No one can surpass Srimati Radharani in relishing the qualities of the Lord through this supreme transcendental mellow. Therefore, the Lord himself agreed to assume the position of Radharani in the form of Lord Sri Gauranga. He then relished the highest position of Parakiras as exhibited in the transcendental abode of Vraja. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Ram Bhajan. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra, Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai, Shri Shri Gaunitai Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan Ji Ki Jai, Shri Shri Lakshmi Nrsimhadev Ki Jai, Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
Nitai nami neche namirhate, Shraddha mulyanam dite chere. Nitai nami neche namirhate, Shraddha mulyanam dite chere. Mulyanam dite chere. Dennis and Karina, Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining us all the way from Germany. So nice to see you here. You've written here in the question box about the statement from Srila Prabhupada you read at the end of Japa. What is meant with making a farce, and what is the difference between trying to reach this stage and making a farce? Well, it's a very subtle point, but be real and genuine. The word sincere comes from a word that means without wax. Because when marble came into fashion for buildings, the best marble was sold at the highest price, and the best marble had no cracks in it. But some unscrupulous merchants would take inferior marble and they'd fill it with colored wax so it looked like it was superior marble, and then they'd sell it at the high price. And when it got hot later on, the wax would come out and everyone could see that it was a farce. So the idea of sincerity is to practice at the level you're at now, to the best of your ability. Swe adhikariyanishta saguna parikirtita vipariyatu dosha sad ubarayo eva nishchaya. It's a fixed principle that you should act according to your adhikari to practice devotional service. Don't try to imitate others. Also, Don't try to pretend to be more advanced than you are. There's a saying in Bengal that don't drink water underwater on a fast day. So everyone's fasting, and it can become a prestigious exhibition that, oh, I'm fasting, I'm very advanced. But then the person actually can't fast fully from water. So he goes to the river to take a bath, goes underneath the water and drinks water then, as he thinks nobody's watching me. This is a farce. So we have to, also in the context of what Prabhupada was speaking about this farce, to take up the practice but have no intention of actually following the rules and regulations, just going on willy-nilly doing what one wants, but then chanting Hare Krishna and pretending to be advanced. So one should be sincere and do the best one can, that one can. Sri Madhava Mahotsava Prabhu said, regarding the danger of concoctions, is the reading of esoteric literatures of the Goswamis, like, for example, Lalita Madhava, instead of trying to simply absorb Srila Prabhupada's books over the course of one's lifetime, a misunderstanding of Srila Prabhupada's mission. It seems that Srila Prabhupada and other acharyas were careful regarding recommending Paramahamsa books. Hi, can one achieve prema simply by chain reading Srila Prabhupada's books and serving Krishna based on their instructions, or is one expected to read Goswami books as well after a certain amount of practice? Yes, I like your idea of chain reading Srila Prabhupada's books and serving Krishna based on the instructions. It's a good proposal. It's true that the acharyas like Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, Srila Prabhupada were cautious about introducing topics that were not understandable to the level of the devotee at which he or she was practicing. Fact is, if you assimilate what Srila Prabhupada's given by going deeply within his books and chain reading them, you'll find that they're a lot deeper than you might have thought. And the endeavor to read them very deeply reveals this. Otherwise, one may think, oh, I'll try to read other things in order to become more advanced than everybody else. But first assimilate what Prabhupada's given. And you'll find that within the Caitanya-caritamrta, for example, the esoteric teachings of rasa are also present in the Nectar of Devotion. If you read that again and again and get a foundational understanding of the science of rasa, and simultaneously go on serving and chanting and go through the process of anartha nivritti, come to the stage of nishta, being fixed in mind, and then ruchi, having a taste, asakti, which means you have no other consideration except Krishna consciousness. Your mind's fully attached. And bhava. Bhava is a stage at which a ray of the internal energy appears within the heart, and the heart becomes soft, and there one begins to realize Krishna's Nam, Rup, Guna, and Lila within the heart, within one's own heart. So this is the recommended process, and Bhagavatam describes how by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, which we have, and all the other information that's giving us Sambandha Gyan, we're equipped for this. Sringara Ras Devi Dasi. My question is about Bhagavad Gita, verse 17.5, about the austerity of speech. Lord Krishna gives us the guidelines for our speech. It should be truthful, pleasing, and beneficial. With our conditioned nature and false ego in our day-to-day life, how do we know about the truthfulness of our speech? Personally, for me, pleasing speech is a very big struggle, specifically with people who are close to me. When the urge to speak, especially in anger, is very strong at that time, it is very hard for me to have pleasing speech. Kindly guide me how to develop pleasing speech. You have to practice. That's why it's an austerity. The inclination isn't there, so it wouldn't be an austerity if you didn't have the inclination to speak angry words. So you have to be careful. It makes a difference what you say. When you voice something, it's creative. The words come out and they start to take a physical form and they have implications. Speaking matters. So Krishna is just asking you to amend your speech. Think about it before you speak. Truthful, pleasing. Conditioned nature, false ego, how do we know with truthfulness of our speech? Well, look within yourself before you speak. Oftentimes the mind becomes devious and says, oh, I know the truth, but I'll say something else. But just try saying the truth instead. I mean, we know what the truth is. If it's 6, say 6. If it's 6, don't say 8. And if somebody says, your spouse says, did you take that book off the stand? Like, no, I didn't do it. But you did. Don't lie. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when we, at first we practice to deceive. It's very implicating lying. There's yamas and niyamas, do's and don'ts. There's also 10 commandments in the Old Testament. 5 yamas, 5 niyamas, 10. 10 commandments, Bible. Means you have to actually become a decent person before you can enter into deeper topics. Be connected with God. You have to be truthful. He's all truthful. So practice these things in your life. It's actually ecstatic. Having some guidelines to practice truthfulness, for instance, is really wonderful. It's exciting to notice the difference between what my tongue wants to say and what I should actually say. And then if you can get a victory and actually say the truth, then there isn't this cognitive dissonance that causes so much anxiety. That's why the yamas and niyamas are there, because if there's cognitive dissonance, could you look that up, please, Avantika? If there's cognitive dissonance, then it's very difficult to concentrate the mind. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushaka hinantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. So practice telling the truth. And when anger comes, do what your mother said. As if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. Didn't she say that? Listen to your mama. Where's our cognitive dissonance?
Cognitive dissonance means the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and attitude change.
Ooh, one more time.
Cognitive dissonance is the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and attitude change.
Yeah. So our speech should be aligned with the highest principles of Dharma. Tell the truth. Of course, there's a kind of cognitive dissonance when we tell the truth, because the mind's saying, why'd you do that? Now we're going to be in trouble. But that's a better kind of cognitive dissonance. Chitralekha Saki, a question. A friend asked me how to chant good quality japa. She is physically handicapped and is always extremely tired and sleepy because of her deteriorating physical condition. She struggles to focus on her japa, and her mind is always distracted since her childhood. Please, how can I best help her? Well, one way that Krishna recommends becoming more attracted to the mantra is to study it. Hear about the potency of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And the more that one has that clear understanding, Siddhanta Bulya Chitanakara Alash Iha Hoite Krishna Lagi Sudrir Manash, the mind becomes more fixed and determined when you study the mantra and understand its potency. Everybody struggles with the mind because it's unruly, and it's been that way for many lifetimes, and yoga means to really control the mind. So it's a practice that everyone has to go through, have to really work at it. But the result is that if one can fix one's mind on Krishna, then naturally Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janya Yashivairagyam Jnanam Charya Rahaitukam. All the perspective and knowledge that one needs to advance in devotional service comes. But that there are various conditions of life that we're going to go through, sickness, health, and especially if it's chronic. It's very difficult, but the advice always is do the best you can with what you have now and try to regulate it. Find a period of time that at least you can do every day something. And from there, there's a possibility of advancing and getting more empowerment. So everyone should do the best they can and try to increase a little bit at a time if possible. Also, have good association. It's much easier to stay fixed if you can find some association. Like this morning when we chanted together, because we're all together in one place, no one thinks, oh, let me go off and do something else right now. It's like, hey, where'd you go? You stay here. Stay in association, and it's much easier to focus. But my heart goes out. I mean, it's very difficult when the body's not cooperating, obviously. And when we're in such a condition, it gives an opportunity for us to just find a space in time when we can actually do what we can and then try to increase it. Reflection from Anandamayi Radha Devi Dasi. I attended this session for the first time, and I found this method of reading CC with Mridanga very innovative and attractive. Thank you. I would really like to continue attending. Please continue to attend. Thank you very much for being here. Vaikuntanayaka Prabhu, all the way from South India. This is follow-up question on your answer on sincerity. You cautioned against imitation and advised on doing the services as per our capacity. However, it is not possible to get into is it not possible to get into a complacent mood with this? My understanding is that only if we push ourselves beyond our capacity does our capacity grow and spiritual strength increases. So how do we have a balance between working as per our capacity and pushing ourselves beyond our comfort zone? Well, that's always, in any practice, we're fighting against complacency and plateaus. That's why there's this interesting word, niyamagraha, that has two meanings. One is, don't stop doing it, and the other one is, don't do it with complacency. That is Krishna. Don't do it for the sake of doing it, but make sure you're leaning into it. So if you find yourself on a plateau, then try to go deeper into the holy name or increase the amount that you're chanting, or both. And it also helps, again, to have good association. Because when you get around those who are moving at a faster rate, then we get carried along. We also see that, oh, I'm not going so fast. If you're the smartest one in the room, you're in the wrong room. Prem Sarovara. Is Lilamrita recommended as a mandatory reading as well to understand Prabhupada's life? What is the meaning of mandatory? Avantika, please. We'll check and see if it's mandatory. Give us the exact definition. I mean, the phraseology here, recommended as mandatory, seems a little contradictory, because if somebody's recommending something, I just recommend it, and on the other side, it's mandatory. I recommend that you make it mandatory. What does it mean? Avantika? Can't hear you. Somebody's got her muted.
You have to unmute, Avantika, because here everyone's allowed to unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Okay. Mandatory means required by law or rules. Compulsory.
Etymology, please.
So it comes from late Latin, mandatum, and then it became mandatarius, and then.
But what do those words mean in Latin?
It doesn't say. Let me look.
You have to look in the etymological dictionary.
Okay.
Thank you. Mandate. Look up mandate. Click on mandate. The red mandate. A command, judicial or legal order, from Middle French mandat, and directly from Latin mandatum, commission, command, order. Mandare, to order, commit to one's charge. Man means hand, like manual. Is it mandatory? I think it's a good idea. I go more with the side that it's highly recommended than it's mandatory. I mean, if you'd like, we can make it mandatory. It's a good idea. Highly recommended. 2, are the residents of Nadia Nagari called Sahajas? The Nagaris, not Nadia Nagari. Nagaris? Not residents. It's a class, it's a philosophy, a group of people, Nadia Nagaris, called Sahajas because they practice Prakritya Sahaja, Parakya Ras, which is not recommended in the material world. No, this is what Prabhupada said. They treat Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as if he were Krishna, and they try to enter into this conjugal rasa with him, but he's here as one being enjoyed by Krishna. That's his mood, so it's a disturbance to his mood. Bhakta Amit, Hare Krishna. Could you provide some strategies we can adopt to converge our occupational duties work to Krishna consciousness? One strategy is that you tithe, give a portion of your income. When you work, if you give some money to something, a cause in Krishna consciousness that's helping to expand the movement, then that's a very potent way. A lot of religious groups do that, and Prabhupada recommended it for householders. And if you do that, then you'll naturally, your mind will be more engaged in seeing how your work is connected. That's one way that's very helpful. You can also use your position as a doctor to get some kind of attention. In other words, if you have doctor in your title, you could also wear a white jacket and a stethoscope around your neck and then do a video. Everyone will listen to what you have to say because you're a doctor. I mean, the fact is, if you're educated, you have some title, and you preach Krishna consciousness, you can use that, dovetail it, say, hi, I'm a doctor, and this is what I believe in. You can also use analogies from your work to illustrate the process of Krishna consciousness. For instance, I'm not really a gardener by any stretch of the term. At least I'm not very good at it, but the last few classes I gave in corporate, I used the gardening metaphor and tried to extend the metaphor, and people appreciate it. Use something that you're good at, that you know about, and then explain it, make a connection in Krishna consciousness so that you can educate people about the principles, and that can be very effective. Nice question. Shingara Ras, if I have permission, then I have a follow-up question about truthfulness. Due to our limitations with 4 defects, we may not necessarily be untruthful on purpose or intentionally. How do we handle that kind of untruthfulness? Well, read the Shastras and figure out what the truth is, and then try to conform to that. As in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about the basic principles of how we should think and how we should act and what the truth is. So you have to have some standard, and the standard is the Shastra. Apara Gaurungi, a question: can you elaborate how one's ashrama cannot be an impediment in attaining perfection in devotional service? I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you tell me what you mean, Apara Gaurungi?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances.
Indeed.
Maharaj, my question was that a lot of people think that because they're grihasthas, they cannot really become spiritually perfect, or they cannot do how much the brahmacharis or the sannyasis can do. But I just wanted you to elaborate how being grihastha ashram could not be an impediment in attaining perfection in devotional service.
One word, Nityananda. He was a grihastha. Nobody more elevated than him. He's the guru of everyone. So he's a grihastha. The ashramas are meant to accommodate people's psychophysiological nature at particular stages in their life. That has really nothing to do with spiritual advancement. Otherwise, why would have Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taken advice from Ramananda Roy or Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, for that matter? All of Mahaprabhu's associates were grihasthas. Mostly they were grihasthas, Prabhupada points out. It's really an important ashram to learn in, because Krishna consciousness is applicable in all aspects of life. And when you're in the grihastha ashram, it's a great austerity to learn to cooperate, learn to manage your worldly affairs alongside Krishna consciousness. When you learn how to do that, you can also become realized. Vidyam cha yas tadvedo bayam saha. There's a way in which, when you can do the two side by side, you become very expert, and part of that expertise is based on the fact that you see how everything is engageable in Krishna service. Everything can be transformed. And as they say, your mate is your mirror. When we're able to cooperate in that ashram, you become very qualified for devotional service. So every ashrama has a particular advantage. And the purpose, Prabhupada explains in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, is to give everyone a normal condition of life. Some people For some people, sannyas ashram is a very normal condition of life. They feel natural in that. Other people, they feel very unnatural. So they should be in the grahastha ashram and feel normal and well situated. Because from there, when you're normal, when your mind and body are in a normal condition, then you can fight Maya and be very effective. If you're out of balance from that from the position of your daily life, then how can you actually do anything effectively? So we could take example from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all of his associates. They were in all different ashrams, but mostly the Grahastha ashram, and they are all effective. And I've seen people who are in a brahmachari ashram who are dysfunctional. And they're in the brahmachari ashram because maybe they're antisocial. I mean, it's a great ashram. I spent 13 years in it, and I highly recommend everybody go in the brahmachari ashram for as long as possible. But I also have seen that can also be a place where people don't actually grow if they're not suited for it. So best to be where you're suited. The material condition externally has really nothing to do with your spiritual advancement. So we shouldn't conflate the two and think, because of the ashram, I'm more advanced than other people. If you think that, then you're not very advanced anyway. Did that help, Apara Garangi?
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your nice question. And look it's Ankit for the last question here today. Krishna being magnificent awarded Putana the position of a mother, even though she had an inimical attitude towards Krishna. She didn't have any favorable attitude and didn't render devotional service under his spiritual master's guidance. Our reading pointed out that spontaneous devotional service can be achieved by having a favorable attitude towards Krishna and learning and practicing under an expert spiritual master's guidance. This sounds contradictory. How she can get to a high-level position without going through the recommended scientific process, devotion, and still be able to manage, get in a high position. If she can get to that level by having an inimical attitude, then one can ask why devotees should work so hard to get to the same level of spontaneous devotion. Yeah, that point comes up in the seventh canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Parikshit Maharaj asks about this, and Shukadeva specifically answers that although some people who are directly in Krishna's Leela and think of him inimically and then get benediction from him directly, still it's not devotional service because it's pratikul. It's not favorable. So he says, don't think that that's a way to actually make advancement, is to become inimical towards Krishna. He specifically says that. Some in Krishna's Leela are very fortunate that they come in contact with Krishna, like Shishupal. He was inimical towards Krishna. At the last moment, before his head was cut off, he appreciated Krishna's beauty, and therefore he was liberated. And Putana's contact directly with Krishna, which shows, as the Laghu Bhagavatamrita points out, Rupa Goswami says it's a special feature of Krishna that those who come in contact with him, no matter what their condition of life, they become liberated. But for everybody, the process is to be favorable. And part of being favorable means tadvidi pranipatina, accept the spiritual master, humbly apply your life to the process of Krishna consciousness and so forth. But there are obvious exceptions here, which are extraordinary. So don't try to apply the extraordinary to the ordinary and then generalize it. People do this oftentimes. That's anything. Krishna can do anything. He can liberate anyone, and he does in certain circumstances, but then don't think that applies to you. For instance, there are certain people who don't go to college, don't even finish high school, but then they do something extraordinary in life. Like they start a company, it becomes really effective, and they give a lot of money in charity, and then they get an honorary degree. Have you all heard of this before? There are certain people that have been given honorary degrees in big universities. Like I think Oprah Winfrey got something like that. Maybe Bill Cosby, but I think they took it back from him. Some university gives a degree, and they may not have gone to college. But don't then think, if your parents say, why don't you study, and say, I'm going to be like Oprah Winfrey, I'll just get an honorary degree, and that'll be fine. Don't think like that. I think that I should go through every step because these are exceptional cases. So don't think that I'm going to be one of these exceptional cases and also be killed by Krishna directly by being inimical. So Shukadeva Goswami says, don't do that. So now let's have our Guru Puja. I was requested to join a special meeting at 10. So I'll have the Guru Puja now, and then when we're done, whatever announcements and things, I may have to jump off at 10 o'clock, and unfortunately may miss a few minutes of the last parts of the class. But I thank everybody very much. It's been a really edifying morning here as autumn is coming in, and there's definite churnings going on in the world. And here we are, all cozied up with the holy name, just chanting together and hearing as if there's not a care in the world for us. Narayana parak sarvena kutaschana bibhyati swarga pavarga narakeshu apitur yarta darshana. Market's going up, market's going down, you still make a profit. Prabhupada said that's intelligence. So for devotees, they know the main investment is in hearing and chanting. No matter what's going on around us in the world, we take shelter. Sri Caitanya-caritamrta, it's so important, isn't it? Isn't it amazing to hear about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? And I mean, revisiting these purports where Prabhupada's talking, I mean, his language is so clear and direct and poetical and beautiful. By hearing this regularly, we understand why are we worshiping Lord Chaitanya? And it just gives so much impetus to like dedicate everything to the process of Sankirtan. All the other kind of world literature, so speculative, and especially the crazy goings on in the world nowadays. People screaming at each other, and these kinds of things seem even more, become even more marginalized for us when we understand the sublimity of the process of Krishna consciousness given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivraj Gacharya Stotras Shishi Madhapai Charanada Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivraj Gacharya Stotras Shishi Madhapai Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vriniki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopina Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jamuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Sambheda Bhakta Vrinda Ki. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Gaur Premanande.
Marman, Natari Marman, Natari Marman, Natari Marman, hey, Natari Marman, Natari Marman, Natari Marman, Natari Marman.